Thank you very much, Alan, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. For the benefit of anyone watching on our YouTube channel, members of the Cabinet are present in the chamber this evening, and these members will be voting on proposals. Other members of the Council are participating via Microsoft Teams and can take part in any discussions, ask questions, but cannot vote. Please can I draw everyone's attention to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted and the ground rules. Before we start the formal business, I will do a sound check to confirm everyone can hear and ask everyone to introduce themselves. I'm Matt Borson, I'm Leader of the Council and Chair of Cabinet. If I can start with Cabinet members with Robin Betts first.
Yeah, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Property and Regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin Coffin.
Thank you. Cabinet Member for Transformation Infrastructure.
Thanks, Des Kears.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Cabinet Member for Community Services.
Kim Tanner.
Good evening, everyone. Cabinet Member for Finance and Housing.
And Mike Taylor.
Thought you'd forgotten me. Good evening, everybody.
We'll never forget you, Mike. If I can ask officers to introduce themselves, perhaps starting Paul on.
Good evening, Paul Worden, Chief Financial Services Officer.
I'm Sharon Shelton, I'm the Director of Information.
Good evening, Damien Roberts, Chief Executive.
Victoria Freedom Credit Services.
Jeremy.
Good evening, everyone. Jeremy Whittaker, Strategic Economic Regeneration Manager.
Thank you. And then online we should have Adrian Stanfield.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Director of Services.
Thank you, Adrian. Eleanor Hoyle.
Good evening, Eleanor Hoyle, Director of Planning, Housing and Environmental Health.
Thank you. And Robert Stiles.
Good evening, I'm Robert Stiles, Director of Street Scene, Leisure and Technical Services.
Thank you all very much. I think that's all officers. Yes, it is. So if other members of the council could just introduce themselves when they speak, that would be extremely helpful. Before I go on to the main meat of the agenda, this is obviously the budget at our meeting this evening. So what we'll do is we will do any regular observers of cabinet meetings over the years. We will run the meeting as we've done with previous budget meetings. So we'll take the agenda item as printed, but all budgetary matters will be considered in the substantive item on setting the budget, which will take agenda item 5. This means that the items 8 and 9 on the revenue estimates 2025-26 and the capital plan will be considered under item 5. I'm also suggesting with Cabinet's agreement that the annual service delivery plan, which is annual 13, is taken immediately after item 9, given how much it links with the budget. I hope you all follow that and agree. Thank you, Mike. In that case, we'll move on to item 1, ground rules. Item 2, apologies for absence. We have a full house, so no apologies. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any interest to declare? No. Item 4 are the minutes of our meeting held on 7th January 2025. Can we take these as a correct record? That is agreed. Right, we now come on to agenda item 5, which, as I said, will take into account the revenue estimates and the capital plan. That is set in the budget. We have Sharon and Paul here with us, and Sharon, you go off.
I am, thank you. Thank you. So first of all, apologies, because as ever, this is a very long report, and I'm sorry, it's also a very long introduction, because there are lots of things that I have to say to you in you making your recommendations about the budget. And on top of all that, there's a lot of technical things in there as well, so I'm going to try and deal with this as best I can. To complicate matters even further, there's also a short supplementary report that goes alongside this paper, because at the time we were publishing this agenda, we hadn't had the final settlement from government. We have now had it, and it is slightly different to the provisional settlement, only because of National Insurance grant. but if it's okay, I'll pick that up at the right point of this agenda. So it is quite a difficult report to get your head round, and hopefully by the end of what I've got to say, and we've dealt with all the recommendations, you'll actually agree this is actually quite a good budget that you can recommend on to full council, and one that will allow you to address some of your key priorities. So hopefully that's what it's going to look like. So what I'm going to suggest, as always, is that to make it a lot easier, rather than me just rambling on, we go through the sections one at a time, and I'll just say a few things about each section as we go. Some have recommendations, some don't, but we can take it from there if that's okay. Yeah, okay. So the first section that I'd like to start with is section 6, which is the settlement, the local government finance settlement. That's on page 24 if you're following it. The settlement for 25-26 is the last in the current format, because we have been told quite categorically that the next settlement, 26-27, will be the first to follow the funding review that this incoming government is going to do. So I think this time next year we'll be probably looking at something quite different. We've been told that new homes bonus will disappear, and they are giving consideration to what might take its place, but we don't know what that might be at the moment. The settlement we have received in 25-26 is actually a reduction on last year's settlement, but we were expecting that, and we've already been planning that, so it's not a major surprise. And actually, in reality, it was probably a little bit better than what Paul and I thought it was going to be, so actually that's not too bad. And there was even better news, I suppose, in that we received another grant. It's not part of the settlement, but it's come along as a specific grant in connection with polluter pays, so to do with waste and recycling. And we have been given our award for 25-26, which is just shy of £1 million. And when you take that into account, actually we did better than here. So far, so good. I mentioned that there's a supplementary report, and that was because, as I said, we hadn't had the final settlement. We went to publish this report for the agenda. And we knew that there was going to be a difference, because the government did declare, when they put up the national insurance for employers, that there would be some compensation to local authorities for that. But they hadn't had time at the time of the provisional settlement to work out what that was going to be. So they had to wait for the final settlement. So the only difference in the final settlement is that grant, insurance grant. So the report, the supplementary report, tells you how much that is, and it's £157,550 for tolling. Just to say, that compares to a total cost for us of £250,000. So we didn't get full compensation for that, as did nobody. But it is at least a contribution towards it. So in the supplementary paper that's actually uploaded to your agenda packs, we are recommending that that additional sum is transferred into the transformation reserve. So I think if you're happy with that, Chairman, you can probably pick up the recommendation. I think it's 614 on page 26, and the supplementary recommendation. I can read that out if you like, because it's elsewhere.
Go for it, Chair.
Yeah. So the recommendation on the supplementary paper says that note the additional funding of £157,550 allocated through the final local government finance settlement. Secondly, endorse the transfer of this additional funding to the earmarked transformation reserve. If members are happy with that, and I suggest that's the recommendation basis go on there on your paper.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Just as in terms of the items, if any member remotely has a question, please virtual hand up and we'll come to you before we skip on to the next section. That might be easiest. As ever, Kim, your cabinet member for responsible for finance, anything to add on sort of the overarching position?
Yeah, as Sharon explained, with the new government in place, there was a pretty high level of uncertainty with regard to grant funding until just 2 weeks ago. But it's quite a relief to find that we can still carry on with our business as usual for one more year. And we're still able to top up our reserves and move forward with a capital plan. But I feel I should say thank you to the accountancy team, because their guesstimates again were really so close to what we received, and they again have protected us in the way that they always do. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll wrap all of these up sort of like formally at the end, but can we just agree the recommendations from 6.14 also Sharon read out? Oh, sorry, before we do, Martin, I didn't see you waving at me there.
Thank you. I agree with the recommendation, by the way. I just want to make a point that this council is very lucky, and all councils are very lucky, that the government is funding the national insurance contribution. What it is making absolutely clear to private business is that they are the target. Absolutely 100%. And I really find this quite difficult to digest, but obviously I agree with the recommendation.
Which also explains the terrible in view. But also, if you're going to fund it properly. We've got a halfway house. So anyway, we can talk about the government's economic policy, or we can set the budget tonight. I think we should set the budgets. Yeah, we will. Can we take that as agreed? Excellent, Sharon.
Okay, so I'm now on to section 7, which is on page 26, and that's national non-domestic rates, otherwise known as business rates. There are no recommendations in this particular section, but I think it's worth just mentioning because our NNDR receipts are increasing due to the continued business growth in our borough. Good news. And because we are in a business rates pool, which we joined a few years ago, we're able to keep a bigger share of those increased receipts. Otherwise, you just hand them back to government. And that's one of the reasons that we've been able to set aside more money, as Kim mentioned, to our reserves to help support our corporate priorities. So it's worth acknowledging where that is coming from. So this is all great news, but there is a but. The reform of local government funding that earlier comes alongside a reset of the business rate baseline. And that means that the baseline we will be expected to achieve before you can keep any of the extra would be moved upwards. And therefore the extra sums we're now enjoying could be quite short-lived. Now, I suspect they won't take away all of that, so we would some of the, but it's a bit of an unknown at the moment. We've been anticipating that in the end, so that shouldn't be a major shock. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. We are benefiting. That could be short-lived. But there's no recommendation.
Please, can the microphone be moved towards Sharon a bit?
That better?
Give it a go.
Yep. So that was business rates, unless anyone had any questions. Right, okay, so next one is section 8, which is usable reserves, and that's on page 27. So Jeremy's here to talk about the annual service delivery plan, which is later on in the agenda. And in that annual service delivery plan, we do have an action for Paul and I to review all of our usable reserves to ensure that what we've got we're using for our most important priorities. So that will be a piece of work that we will be doing. But we felt, bearing in mind where we are with certain projects, we needed to do a little bit of work much earlier to help you facilitate. So we've done what we're calling phase 1 of that piece of work, and we've looked at some of the high level reserves that we've got to decide whether we can actually release some of them, or let's not beat around the bush, funding the Angel Centre, because that is probably one of the most significant projects you've got on your books that you've had probably 25 years. So we need to sort of make some headway with that. So we've done this phase 1 review, and having looked carefully at those reserves, we think we can release £2.2 million from the Budget Stabilisation Reserve, remembering that we set up that reserve just before COVID came, and it's been fantastic to help us through those difficult years of COVID and the economic crisis that came out of that. But I think we're through a lot of that now, and the volatility is now gone. So we think there will still be some money left in the Budget Stabilisation Reserve, but we can release a large chunk of it, which is 2.2 million. And secondly, we think we can release what we're calling the general fund working balance, which is 1.25 million. That sits alongside the general revenue reserve, but it's separate to it. It's an independent one. And because our balance in the general revenue reserve is actually quite high at the moment, we think we can release that one as well. So in total, you have got £3.45 million there that can be released to set aside the funding towards rebuilding of the Angels. So there are some recommendations in your papers for that. I think it's paragraph 8.9. So I'll just pause there in case you've got any questions.
Thank you, Sharon. And you can see that at 8.9, it asks for us to transfer 1.25 million from the general fund working balance and 2.2 million from the Budget Stabilisation Reserve into the Tunbridge Town Centre reserve. Don't see any questions online. I don't see anyone in Cabinet indicating. Can we agree that recommendation? Thank you, Sharon.
Okay, so moving on now to the revenue estimates, which is section 9 on page 28. So first thing to say is that these estimates were reviewed in some detail by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and we've got the chairman of that committee online. And although there were plenty of questions that evening, the estimates as they stood were supported without change. One thing I did say at the ONS committee was that there was a missing element from the papers, from figures in those papers, which was about the reserve contributions that we make to support key priorities. And the reason for that was that we were missing the final settlement, and we were also, there were some things that were still moving at that point. And I did say that we would be bringing those reserve movements to this meeting instead. So now that things have settled and we have got the final settlement, in discussion with the Cabinet member, we think there's scope within these estimates to transfer, wait for it, another 3.25 million to support the replacement of the Angel Centre. That's on top of the money you've just agreed to. So that's the first adjustment that I would recommend to you. Secondly, it sounds like a much smaller figure, but remember that this time last year you were putting an awful lot of money into the TA reserve, another £150,000 into the TA, the homelessness reserve, to support the provision of TA. So there's two recommendations there in respect of transfers to reserves, which I hope you can support.
Thank you, Sharon. So that's paragraph 9.6 of the report. It details at 9.5 what Sharon has just said. Again, I don't see any hands up online. or any comments from the Cabinet. So can we agree the recommendation at 9.6, please?
Thank you. Right, okay, so section 10 is fees and charges. There's no recommendations. So all I need to say here is that the fees and charges that you've carefully considered through the build up to this budget, through the budget cycle, they've all been included in these estimates. Okay, moving then onto the capital plan. So that's on section 11, starting at page 29. So just like the revenue estimates, the capital plan proposals were also considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in January, and they were all supported. There was quite a lot of questioning and discussion, but they were supported as they stood. The table at 11:10, if you've got your agenda in the right place, shows you the schemes that are being recommended to be added to the capital plan. They were all fast track schemes. There's 7 of them, and they were supported as well by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just for the avoidance of doubt, because I've mentioned the Angel Centre several times already, the Angel Centre doesn't yet feature on the capital plan because there's still a fair bit of detail to coordinate, and a final decision also needs to be made about the absolute site that the Angel Centre will go on. But it's intended that a capital plan evaluation will be coming to Cabinet in the next few weeks, months, so that progress can be made with that. And obviously the decisions you've just made about contributions side for the funding will obviously help with that. So in terms of the capital plan overall, there are some recommendations at paragraph 11:13. And I just say that the third of those recommendations talks about 4 schemes have been recommended for fast track evaluation. In fact, it was 7. There's a mistake. Draw that to your attention and invite any questions or comments.
Thanks, Sharon. As you said, this got a good airing at the Open Scrutiny Committee a couple of weeks ago. Again, I don't see any virtual hands on or real hands in the chamber for that matter. So again, I won't read out all 6 recommendations at 11.13, but
okay, right. So now we're on to section 12, which is Treasury Management and Annual Investment Strategy. And this is quite a technical aspect of the report. We are required to provide you with what they call prudential indicators as part of a budget setting report. And they're all there for you to look at and ask questions if you have any questions. But what I will say is, because we're debt free, it's actually pretty much academic, but we still have to do it, and I have to present it. So that being said, there are some recommendations. There's 2 of them at 12:12 and 12:15 for you to adopt.
thank you, Sharon. So at 12:12, we have to make that recommendation. Then we just have to note the annual minimum revenue provision is 12:15. Again, I don't see any virtual hands or real hands. So can we agree the recommendation at 12.12? Agreed, and note the recommendation at 12.15. Excellent. Great, thank you, Sharon.
Okay, section 13 is the medium-term financial strategy, or MTFS. So although obviously the purpose of this report is to set a budget for 25-26, we all have a duty to plan our finances over a longer period of time, make sure that the authority is sustainable. And at Tonbridge and Malling, we adopted a 10-year horizon for adopting our MTFS, which is probably much longer than most councils, but I have to say it has held us in really good stead over the years, and it helped us over lots of troubled waters, shall we say. So the MTFS has a number of high-level objectives, but there are two key ones. The first one is that we have to have a balanced budget by the end of the strategy period. What does that mean? It simply means that your income has got to be at least as good as your expenditure. You're not spending more than you're getting in. That's a balanced budget. And secondly, to have a minimum of £3 million in your general revenue reserve by the end of that 10-year MTF period, and over that time not actually drop below 2 million at any one point in. Now, at the moment, I think the amount we've got in our general revenue reserve is probably nearer to 10 million. So we're fine at the moment, but we do know that things will change, and we've rehearsed that in various forums. I talked at the ONS committee about an elephant in the room, that being devolution and reorganisation, probably reorganisation more now than devolution. And, you know, I'm sure you're all thinking, so what does a 10-year horizon have to do now with reorganisation, which could be within 5 years or something? What I will say, and exactly what I said at ONS, is this is only a white paper. It's not set in tablets of stone yet. I'm sure there will be twists and turns along the way. Until we have anything more concrete, I would say that we should be continuing with our business. So that's why we're continuing with the MTFS in its current format. I'm not going to go through all the details of the MTFS because we had quite a lengthy discussion about that in your November meeting when we did an interim update. However, with the settlement that we've just had and the progress that you've already made towards some savings targets, the figure we're now facing as a funding gap, you'll see from this report, is £2.8 million, which, bearing in mind, I've just said we've got quite a decent balance in our general revenue reserve, we can phase that in over the next 5 years. So there are some recommendations in relation to the MTFS at paragraph 1321 on page 38. And I'll pause there in case.
Thank you, Sharon. I still don't see any hands online or hands in the chamber. So basing our recommendation at 13.21 off the MTFS, can we endorse the updated MTFS?
Okay, so section 14, savings and transformation strategy. So what's the difference? Well, savings and transformation strategy sits alongside the MTFS to help us drive the savings that we need to achieve. So at the time we published this report, we hadn't completed updating strategy. We've now done this with management team and in liaison with cabinet member, and that should be in a supplement to your agenda pack now. I'll just say it's not set in tablets of stone. What it's there for is to give you a bit of guidance as to where we might find those savings from in general themes. So income generation, transformation, etc. There's a number of themes, and you know we can move things around within those themes, but it's just to give us a general sense of direction of travel. And we do get quizzed on this by our external audit. In terms of the savings, the 2.8 million, as I said, we can break that down into, we call always our tranches. We've got 4 tranches. The first one being 600,000 that we would need to achieve by the beginning of 26/20, April 26. There are some recommendations in relation to the savings and transformation strategy. They're at 14.7 of the report. So again, I'll pause there.
Thank you very much. And Annex 10B is the part of the supplement Sharon was referring to. Excuse me. I don't see any hands online or hands in the chamber. So can we agree to note and endorse the updated savings transformation strategy? Let's agree. Sharon.
Okay. Section 15, collection fund adjustments. There are no recommendations relating to the section. This is just to advise you of any surpluses or deficits on the collection fund account that we have to take into account when we're setting your budget and your council tax. Okay, right. This next one usually interest. So section 16 is about special expenses and also parish council precepts. So this is on page 40. So there's no recommendations obviously about parish precepts, but they are there for you as an annex just for your information. So it's Annex 14. In terms of special expenses, just to give you a bit of history in case you've forgotten, you might remember that as a council we developed a policy back in 2017 for special expenses. So special expenses covers things like playgrounds, parks, open spaces, sports grounds, allotments, churchyards, local events, and more recently, like conveniences, that list. But the biggest cost driver of all of those things is the grounds maintenance contract. About it, playgrounds, parks, sports grounds. And that accounts for about 80% of the overall cost expenses. And you might remember that we have recently relet the grounds maintenance contract. And as part of reletting that contract and putting up tender documentation, the leisure team did quite a mammoth piece of work in updating all the measurements, all the data that related to the sites, and to get it in the tip-top, up-to-date condition. And understandably, that's had some impact on the costs that now come out as the recharge of special expenses. Now, I'm going to say it because there's some big percentage increases, but we're talking about pence. But when you look at it, it's big percentages. There are, I think it's Borough Green and Merryworth, been some quite significant changes percentage-wise, but the absolute value of quite small. But I want members to be aware of that before the bills get produced. It will show on the bill. But it dates back to the fact that we have updated data relating to grounds maintenance. So there are recommendations about special expenses to adopt. They're all set out in the annex 13B, and 16.8 is the paragraph.
Thank you, Sharon. And I think this is what part of the budget, which if we all agree it's an item up for council, I think will attract the most interest, particularly if I can say this as someone who represents Merryworth, when they see that they've got a 3,000% increase in their council tax on their bill. So I look forward to residents in Merryworth getting in contact with their local councillor to ask why you approved this. As you say, it's pence in reality. I don't see any other hands, but then I don't think anywhere else has got a 3,000% increase or in the chamber. So can we endorse the special expenses policy at Annex 13? Darren.
Okay, section 17. This is actually an important aspect of this budget report. So this is often known as the section 25 statement. And it's a statement that I have to produce for you as you recommend a budget for adoption by full council, you have to have received and noted this report. So the key issues actually within the report that I have to give you advice on are whether the estimates that you've got in front of you are robust, and strangely, I don't think I'd be recommending something to you if they weren't, but hey. And then secondly, whether there are sufficient reserves to allow the council to function in the event that financial risks come to fruition. So if you haven't read the report, can I suggest that you just do that before full council? It is quite important. It does set out a lot of the risks that there are. But the good news is, I think, in my judgment, Paul's judgment, we think that the estimates are robust, as I've said, and that the level of reserves are adequate. So can I please ask you to leave and note statement ended for your perusal?
Thank you, Sharon. This is almost like we're marking your homework part of the report, which I feel quite unqualified to do as a finance person. Not seen any virtual hands or physical hands, but that's because we probably don't dare. But can we agree that, please? That is agreed. There you go. Off you go, Sharon.
Okay, I'm getting towards the end now. So section 18 is calculating the Borough Council's tax requirements. So you've done all the hard work now. You've approved the estimates, you've approved the MTFS, and you've approved the savings and transformation strategy. So the calculation actually just comes out in the wash. The calculation is appended at Annex 17. Just to say that that results in a Band D council tax of £245.30, which is a 3% increase last year, which is within the referendum thresholds. And can I ask you to endorse those calculations?
Thank you, Sharon. So £245.30. Seen any questions about that? Chamber Eva, can we endorse that? Cabinet? Thank you.
So that hopefully brings us to the end of that report. You should, I hope, have picked up all the recommendations en route and the supplementary report. Yeah.
Sharon, thank you very much. I will just, before we finalise this, just ask if there's any final comments that anyone wants to make, which I'm not seeing. So at page, if we go back to page 20, page 21 and page 22, all the recommendations that we've picked up are on there. So before I'll take all of them as a vote with a proposer and seconder, but we'll come to Mike first.
Just an observation of thanks to Sharon and the team. To keep us on the straight and narrow is a difficult task when we spend money. Thank you.
Well, Mike, you preempted me to it, and that's not just keeping you and I on the straight and narrow, but actually the work that has been done by Sharon, by Paul, by the accountancy team, as Kim said, has been tremendous, and I think we see that in the rigour in which these papers have been presented to us, and the fact that, as you've explained it so clearly, Sharon, we've been able to go through and really understand exactly what every penny of our £245.30 is being spent on, which I'd argue is value for money. So on that basis, I'm very happy to propose all of the recommendations. Can I have a seconder? That's it, Kim. Thank you. So just bringing all of that together for the sake of procedure, can we agree all of what we've just agreed? That is agreed. Lots of agreement there, which is excellent. Sharon, Paul, thank you ever so much. Right, we move on to item 6, which is available from page 113 on the agenda. This is setting the council tax 2025-2026. Sharon, Paul, do you wish to?
Yeah, just to say it's short, very short, this one. This just really flows on from the last report. As I said, the Borough Councils publish Band D council tax £205.30, 3% increase or £7.14 per annum increase on last year. As the billing authority, we have to not only publish and levy our own council tax, but we also have to do that for all the other precepting authorities as well, combining everything into so we have to prepare the resolution to do that. At this point, I can't tell you what the overall bill will look like because not all the preceptors have set their budgets or council tax yet. The police have, I believe, we're just waiting for notification from them. County Council meet on Thursday and the fire authority don't meet morning. Our council meeting. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the fire authority don't meet until the morning of our council meeting. So yeah, it's always a bit tight. But at the council meeting, you will have a full resolution of all the elements of the council tax, and as a borough council, as the billing authority, we have to adopt that. So the recommendations on this report are just to note that there is a draft resolution ready when they tell us what their figures are, and also to approve our own element of that, which is £245.30.
Sharon, thank you. Don't see any hands online. Chamber. So 3.1.1 on page 113, we have to note the draft resolution and also recommend that full council approve a 3% or £7.14 per annum increase in our elements of the council tax for 2025-2026, which would result in a notional average charge of £245.30 for a Band D property. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please, Kim? Can we agree that unanimously, please, Cabinet? That was agreed unanimously. Thank you. Right, agenda item 7 is available from page 123, which is local council tax reduction scheme for the financial year. Sharon.
Yeah, this is simply the same policy that we currently have. It's just been uprated for things like the national living wage and the other benefit rate changes that will occur. So there's no other changes to the policy itself. So I'm just asking that you recommend the updated policy to full council.
Thank you, Sharon. Kim, anything to add? Nothing to add. Again, I don't see any hands on chamber, but then this is exactly the same day as last year, other than a few changes. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder? That's Kim. Can we agree that unanimously, please? Excellent. That was agreed unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Sharon. 2. Right. Agenda item 8 we covered under the setting the budget item. Agenda item 9 covered under the setting the budget item. As I said earlier, we're going to bring forward agenda item 13, which is the annual service delivery plan, to this part of the agenda because of it's so intertwined with the budget. That's available on page 637 of the agenda. Jeremy, do you wish to say anything to start with?
Much, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just say a few brief words. Just to start by saying that whilst it's myself presenting this plan, shows considerable effort from across the organisation in its fruition. Represents what I hope is viewed as an improved and more efficient approach to performance management at the council. Going from having a suite of APIs that were reported or have been in the past reported to 5 separate meetings on a quarterly basis to just under 70 priority actions and just over 60 KPIs being reported to overview and scrutiny and cabinet as we move forward on a quarterly basis. Certainly, within at least the last 10 years or so, the council has not had a document like this that sets out the work plan and ambition across the whole council. and it will hopefully help both officers and members to track progress, identify where priority projects and KPIs are on track or where milestones and targets are not being met. And indeed, at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, they were broadly very supportive of the plan, and suggestions made at that committee have been incorporated to this latest version. The annual service delivery plan is a tool that can be used in multiple ways. Just a few examples. Obvious one is that it's a means of planning workloads and progressing projects during the year, and it's a means of monitoring and scrutinising the work of the council, both at a relatively high level, but also offers members the opportunity to pick out areas that they want to look at in more detail. And thirdly, it's a means of communicating with the public about what we're delivering, and the intention be to have the plan along with quarterly updates on council's website. As is stated in the report, there are still a few areas to tidy up in the document, mostly areas related to issues around legislation and funding. And that is why there is a recommendation in the report regarding drafting changes to mop up those last few. During the course of 2025 to 26, the intention is that progress will be monitored, as I've said, through reporting to ONS and Cabinet on a quarterly basis. And the proposals for reporting progress have been very much moulded by comments received previously on the reporting of KPIs. However, I would welcome any further views on this, as well as comments on the plan itself. Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you ever so much. If I can just add a couple of points before I come to hands, because I don't see any at the moment. I think firstly, anyone who looks at the committee work programmes for the committees that you're on as members will see that the dates in the annual service delivery plan will feed into that committee's work programme. So obviously, while certainly the scrutiny select committees will continue to set its own work plan, what we'll see happening is we'll look to link the annual service delivery plan with that work plan going forward. There'll be more items coming on there that haven't been requested by members of the committee, but they have come out of this document. The second thing I would just say, and I think, Jeremy, you're absolutely right to emphasise this, it's actually really quite exciting in terms of getting the energy behind our priorities. We're being very open and transparent about what the priorities are, where our funding are going to be directed so that we can achieve on games that we wish to. So I'm very excited by this. And my microphone went off as I was saying how excited I was about the annual service delivery plan. So I'm very excited for those of you who missed it, so I can summarise it that way. I don't see any hands online. Any Cabinet member wish to add anything? No, in which case, can I just divert everyone's attention to page 638? We have 4 recommendations to note the reports, which I trust we can do quite easily. To approve the annual service delivery plan, to delegate any drafting issues to Damien as Chief Executive in consultation with myself, and that the proposed process for reporting updates be approved. The paragraphs there are wrong because there isn't the paragraph 5.6 or 5.8 of the report, but we'll let you off that, Jeremy, because the intention is clear. So can I'm happy to propose. So can I have a seconder, please? Mike, thank you very much. Can we agree that unanimously, Cabinet? That's agreed. And thank you very much, Jeremy, for your presentation tonight and all the work that's gone into this. Right, if we can then go back to page 501, we can come on to the next item on the agenda, which is risk management. This is a recommendation from the Audit Committee of its previous meeting. You will see the recommendations are available on page 502 with regards to risk management around the strategic risk register, recommendations from the Zurich risk management review, and also to present an updated risk management strategy to the September 2025 meeting. I don't see any online to add anything. Any cabinet member comment? No. In which case, I'm happy to move these 3 recommendations from the audit committee. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Martin. Can we agree that unanimously? That is agreed. Thank you. Right, agenda item 11 is the Treasury Management Update and Treasury Management and Annual Investment Strategy from the Audit Committee's at its same meeting. You'll see that at page 525, they ask that the Treasury Management position is noted, and on page 526 that the Treasury Management Annual Investment Strategy for the next financial year be adopted. Again, I don't see any hands online or in the chamber, so I'm happy to propose. Can I take a seconder, please? Kim, you were in there very early. Can we agree that unanimously, please, Cabinet? That was agreed unanimously. Thank you. We now come on to agenda item 12, which is the annual audit report of 2023-2024. That's attached as Annex 1 to this particular agenda item, and the audit committee are asking for our approval for this, that the comments in respect of the key recommendations from 22-23 be noted, and that the management comments raised to the 23-24 value for money recommendation and endorsed. Again, I don't see any hands online. Any comments from cabinet members? I don't see. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please? Des, in there quick. Can we agree that unanimously, cabinet? That was agreed. Right, we've done item 13, so we don't need to redo item 13. If I can now ask everyone to turn their attention to the supplementary paper, because we will move there for our next items. This is because they were considered by committees which met after the agenda for this meeting had been published. So I'll start with agenda item 14. This is the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government consultation, local authority funding reform objectives and principles. Now, the annex you'll see from page 3, draft response to the consultation is set out. It's also available from page 675 of the agenda, which I had before the meeting marked, but I haven't quite got to turn there yet. Right. Kim, this is in your cabinet area. Anything you wish to add?
Only really to say that Sharon's been warning us for quite some time that this was coming, and we've benefited from the delay. You know, we're not going to come out of it very well, I guess, but it is a fairer way of funding local government, local authorities. And so I thank the team for completing the consultation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. We've got to make our case, however optimistic or otherwise we are. I don't see any virtual hands or any physical hands for that matter. So I'm happy to propose. Kim, you happy to second? Excellent. Can we agree that unanimously, please, Cabinet? That was. Thank you very much. Right, page 685 refers to the fact that agenda item 15 is to follow. This is the Waste Services Contract Strategic Approach to Service Provision. It's actually available from page 9 on the supplementary agenda. This came to Communities and Environment Scrutiny Select Committee last week, and we'll see at page 10 of the supplementary agenda the 3 recommendations that we remain in partnership with Tunbridge Wells Borough Council to deliver the household waste recycling collection and street cleansing service. Contracting out model remain our preferred model for delivery of said service, and that a further report be presented to that consideration of specification issues. Martin, this is in your portfolio. Do you wish to add anything?
Thank you. I think the debate was fairly quick because it was quite decisive, and it was very clear from the committee that the recommendations we see here, which were the ones that were drafted, are indeed accepted. And yeah, I commend it to my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Martin. I don't see any member online who is waiting to speak. Neither do I see anyone in the chamber. So I'm happy to propose. Martin, are you happy to second? Excellent. Can we agree those 3 recommendations unanimously? They are agreed. Thank you. Right. If we stick with the annex, we'll see agenda item 16 is in there too, because that is the corporate complaints policy review from the same meeting. This refers to the new corporate complaints policy, which is at Annex 3 of that report. That's the first recommendation. And the second recommendation asks that this be implemented from June 2025. Don't see any hands online. Neither do I have any in the chamber. So I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder? Des, thank you very much. Can we agree the new corporate complaints policy? That was agreed unanimously. Thank you very much. Cabinet. Right, we now come on to our matters for information, starting with agenda item 17, which are decisions taken by Cabinet members. You'll see at page 799 that there are only a couple actually for today. The first is leaving aside the ones that were taken by Cabinet because we discussed them at our last meeting, but we have an extension to the Windmill Lane, Gypsy and Traveller Sites management arrangements. Kim, that's one of your decisions. Anything to add?
I need to really say that KCC have agreed to continue the management of that site on our behalf, and during the next year we intend to gain our own expertise so that we can take it on properly next year.
Thank you, Kim. As always, anyone online, if you just put your virtual hand up if you wish to ask a question of the Cabinet member taking the decision. And the second decision is one by Robin Betts with regards to the new lease arrangements at the 6-in-1 Community Centre on Northwood Road in Tunbridge. Robin, anything to add?
Only that this will assist to the 6-in-1 Club to get, I think it's a grant funding, community grant funding that they're applying for. So this new lease will enable them to do that.
Excellent. The works are underway at the moment at the 6-in-1 Club on their roof, which was only possible because of this lease arrangement. So I'm very pleased that we could assist. And I know the local members were very much in support of this. So thank you to them. Thank you to Robin for enabling that. And there is another decision around staffing in the Housing Solutions team, but once that's been implemented, so that will come. So that'll be on our next agenda, which is next month. Right. Agenda item 18 is a notice of forthcoming key decisions. This was published as a supplement too, if we return back to that paper. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the notice of forthcoming key decisions, or can we note that notice? That's noted. Great. Thank you. Agenda item 19 is urgent items, of which there aren't any. We do not need to enter a private session. So at 8:29 p.m, I can close the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance. Thank you.
Night.